Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Matrix Mash. I'm Emily Moyer from Off Planet Radio, and with me is my good friend Robert Phoenix from 11th House Astrology. And there is so much going on that we're not going to waste much time with introductions and pre-show amble. There is so much stuff to discuss here. So we're just going to we have a list, and we're going to kind of move down it. We're going to start with the odd synchronicity of the Malibu Fires and Gillette, and move our way through a whole list of weird topics, ending with possibly one of the weirdest things I've ever heard of. So, Robert, welcome back.
Hey, Emily, it's great to be back, and it's amazing just how much mind-melting content has accrued in the last 2 to 3 weeks.
Yep.
Since we've gotten together.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot to talk about, and I'm really psyched about what we can stir up today.
All righty, so here we go. So I was driving home from work. It was about last week sometime, and driving the same way that I always drive, and something caught my eye that I somehow have either missed or not kind of fully gotten the implications of until the other day, and that is that there's a sign. I don't know if that sign exists headed one way on the freeway or just the other way or just the one I was going. But when I was coming up to Las Virgenes, which is an exit that I get off at all the time, one of my places that I stop to eat all the time is over there and whatever. And it's also, Las Virgenes is also known as Malibu Canyon Road. It's the canyon that takes you from the 101 freeway to the beach. As I was coming up to that exit, I noticed a sign that said King Gillette Ranch. And I thought, oh, wow, look at that. I thought this is some serious Ole Damagard territory, right? Where they leave the clue of what the next sort of event or hoax or psyop or false flag will be at the last one, right? So we had these Woolsey Fire that led from Chatsworth to Malibu that I at some point will say all the things I have to say about, but that time is not now because that one is a super interesting one. But that was going on, and that really captured a lot of our attention for the months of basically October and November, right? And then we moved into this weird stuff with Gillette in January, right? And this Gillette ad, and you brought up some of these connections of Gillette being the vest and these yellow vest protests and all of this fallout we're starting to see now around this, whole Gillette thing. So, wow, there's part of me that feels like we need to talk to Ole Damagard and see what he thinks of this one and let him pull all those strings. But sounds like you've been looking into this a little bit too. So what did you find about King Gillette Ranch, Robert?
Well, the King Gillette Ranch it's a state park, so people can actually go there, hang out, check it out, be a part of it, experience it, explore it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it also was at one time the home of King Gillette, the guy who was the founder of Gillette. Let me see if I can just grab this here and give you guys a visual as to it's a beautiful structure. It's Spanish in its motif. I'll give you a visual here. Let me show you what it looks like. It's a really, really beautiful structure. It's, I guess the equivalent would be something along the lines of, where Henry Ford lived in Florida, right? I mean, it'd be very similar in some ways. So this is one part of Gillette Ranch. It's also kind of like, his San Simeon. Mm-hmm. This would be kind of the Hearst his version of the Hearst world.
Right.
And so it's intact. Of course, there was no fire there. And one of the things that we talked about last time was how King Gillette was a 33rd degree Mason. He was also a hardcore globalist. And in his version of globalism, it was kind of a Fabian socialist model where theoretically the people were the ones that were in charge of this massive global corporation. So it's a strange fusion of having this overarching kind of system and which interpenetrates everything.
Right.
And it's the people who are all part of that same system. And in fact, he wanted to hire Teddy Roosevelt to be a part of this kind of new model. He was going to pay him a huge amount of money back in Teddy Roosevelt's days, which were the 1930s, to help, grow this model. And one of his ideas was to take Niagara Falls and use Niagara Falls as a source of power to generate this massive kind of global city, right?
Yeah.
So this guy had big visions, big plans, and it's also very interesting that his company was purchased eventually by Procter and Gamble, who have had a long history of being involved in very dubious practices in terms of their products, in terms of their images, in terms of their symbolism. Procter and Gamble was targeted back in the 1950s and 60s as being satanic. So the stuff that we talk about now has been around for a long time.
Yeah, Procter and Gamble is also located just about there's or at least one of their headquarters or manufacturing sites is located just about 25 or 30 miles up the road in Oxnard from where King Gillette Ranch is. So that's, and also located between the freeway and the beach. And in fact, I bet it would be interesting to check the line between Gillette Ranch and Procter and Gamble.
Right, how many miles it is and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
line they're both on.
So we just wanted to kind of, circle back to this because it's interesting how we have the fires, and then right there on the precipice on the edge of the fires in Southern California, there's King Gillette Ranch. And then we go into the Gillette Jean, which is still going on, by the way. And of course, and
that's the connector between King Gillette Ranch and then the Gillette ad. So the yellow vest.
That's right, because the events, right? It connects the two events. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. It's very interesting to piece these things together.
Have you looked at all at how much this has damaged Gillette as a company?
I haven't looked at the sales figures, but I'm assuming it's damaged them significantly.
When I was at CVS the other day, they were having a huge sale on like Gillette cartridges and power, kind of things. Because usually those things are really expensive, right?
They're very expensive. I mean,
having a huge sale on them, yeah.
Shaving is one of the big scams, in our culture. So
hi, Jasper.
Jasper's decided to get in on.
Yeah, Olivia's here. She's overlaying on her divine blanket on my bed, but
so I just need to manage him to the point where he's no longer manageable. In which case, I have to do something drastic. Kick him off Mashup Island.
Yes, a few weeks ago, Olivia knocked over a flower vase during a recording of a show. Bad
girl.
Right now, she's napping sweetly on the divine blanket. So
I just thought it would be good for us just to start off and circle back because that's an event that's happened. You were the one that noticed it, and
maybe I'll send this over to Ole Damagard. Maybe have a conversation with Ole Damagard or something.
That'd be very interesting.
Yeah,
just in terms of the location. I like Ole. He's
I've never met him or spoken to him, but he seems like a decent guy, and I could kind of give him the full download on some of the other stuff behind the Woolsey and Malibu fires and see what he could dig out with that, and if that's any connection to some of this further. It'd be interesting to see if I'm of the opinion and suspicion that there is either a base that extends from where Woolsey Canyon starts in Chatsworth over to where the end spot is in Malibu over there, either a base or that there's a high-speed train that connects two bases that are at both of those spots. Because at Woolsey Canyon and Chatsworth is where Rocketdyne and what's the other one? Boeing are. And then, where things ended up, over in Malibu, we've always heard a lot about that base over there kind of at the edge in Malibu. And I would wonder sort of what King Gillette Ranch has to do with sort of that.
It might have something to do. The other base that people talk about is the base on Catalina Island.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I know someone who's been spending a lot of time going out to Catalina Island and sort of.
And I've actually heard there is an underground beneath the ocean train, right?
Yeah. Well, I think just the whole thing. I think it may just be one big one, all the way from Chatsworth, and may even extend farther than Chatsworth. May even extend to like the Antelope Valley, which is where a lot of these cloaked craft that are in the clouds emanate from.
Right.
Is this base over in Antelope Valley? So this could be almost one either continuous thing or different sort of hubs that are connected by high-speed train.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's also, so my friend who's been going out and checking out Catalina, one of the things that Catalina is associated with that I didn't really know is like early creation of like certain kinds of audio. There was an audio studio there, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And if you think about this, a lot of the stuff that goes on in bases and technologies that they use really has to do with sound.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You know, that's part of how they're controlling people too, totally how they're controlling people is light and sound, obviously. Right. So
Right.
what were they doing out there on Catalina Island?
Yes.
To this day, there's still not really cars or anything out there. It's like a very weird time warp.
It's almost like that TV show, The Prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that
was
very popular. Oh, you got to see The Prisoner.
Hmm.
That came out in the 1960s, 1966, 67. And it's with Patrick, what's his name? Patrick that's not Patrick McGowan. Patrick, I always get him confused with Patrick McNee, who he's related to, who is in the Avengers.
Hmm.
Anyway, it's a really kind of groundbreaking. Both The Prisoner and The Avengers were hidden in plain sight TV shows that were produced by the BBC.
Okay.
So Patrick McGowan is great. He's a great actor, and he's been in a ton of really interesting films.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, if you've ever seen the movie Scanners, he plays the doctor in Scanners. The whole movie Scanners is connected to McGill and all the mind control.
Totally. Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, getting back to Catalina Island, there are two things that are, I think, of interest. This whole train thing that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Now, supposedly, there is a one-way rail system. Now, it may be a bit different than some of the military trains, but supposedly there's a one-way, like Mach 3 train system that goes all around the world in one direction, right? Mm-hmm. So you can get on in Washington, D.C., and you could be in California an hour later or something like that. Yeah. That's how fast it is. So I'm not sure if the Catalina experience or the Catalina Express is connected up to this train, although it could be because it does have to go underneath the ocean, right?
Yeah, there's very interesting train tracks and activity where Woolsey Canyon starts in Chatsworth as well. Mm-hmm. It's running through that whole area. On the surface. And so it would make sense that you would make something underground that sort of paralleled what was on the surface, like just in terms of, from what I understand, like the kind of thing that I understand both intuitively and in terms of other things I heard in discussions I've had with people that this train may be quote unquote like drive pod, like not a full train, not like tons of cars. Like you get in your own little pod and you just scoot along on that. And it's sort of, it's a...
Yeah. That totally makes sense.
And it may also use sort of space and time folding technology, whereas part of the way they're able to travel, it isn't just that it's so fast, it's that it folds the space between two things like a taco shell, right? So like here's Los Angeles, here's Washington, D.C., where they're a lot closer if you fold it like a taco shell. So you fold space and then the time between the two are very short.
I've heard that the technology of these trains is much like the technology in pneumatic tubes.
Yeah.
And they're really just traveling basically on compressed air. And that's why they were able to travel so quickly.
Yeah.
The other thing about Malibu is that's where Marilyn Monroe went before she became Marilyn Monroe. She was actually married to a soldier on Malibu, right? Mm-hmm. And she, I think that's where she got some reprogramming.
Yeah.
Was when she was hanging out there.
Definitely a really weird place. I worked in Malibu in the early 90s and definitely had it's a very strange crossing grounds, right? Kind of people that come through there. There's a lot of homeless people, even though it's a very wealthy community because the weather is nice, right? And there's a lot of celebrities there, obviously. Obviously, there's a lot of wealthy people, but it's a misnomer that Malibu is only wealthy. There's lots of people there that have had generational land passed down to them. So they live there, but they're not necessarily wealthy. Yeah. It's a very interesting place. I would say I had some of the strangest experiences of my life there.
It's got a very weird vibe.
Weird vibe, yeah.
Very weird vibe.
It's also beautiful. There's people come from all over the world to check it out. So, yeah.
And even the boat ride out there is great. It's a nice little boat ride.
And then I had something else I was going to say about Catalina real fast. What was it? He's not someone whose work I follow closely or anything like that, but I remember years ago also hearing L.A. Marzulli talk about the Smithsonian finding the giants with the red hair buried in places on Catalina, and when they'd be called out there stealing all that stuff and hiding it like they do with everything else.
Right.
Yeah. So the giants.
Why not? Yeah. If I was a giant, I'd want to hang out in Malibu too. Right.
Great. All right. So that's kind of circle back on there. Where we moving to next? We're going to get into the circle back to another piece of work we did on our show on Off Planet Radio earlier this year, where we kind of did our breakdown of Joe Rogan. Maybe we should even link that in the show description here, because interesting.
Yeah, you and I mashed up with Joe. A couple of months ago.
Well, and it was when you were on Off Planet, and it was during that show that we decided to start doing Matrix Mash, because one went so well. Yeah. Okay.
Well, right. All right. So yeah, we got into the Joe Rogan stuff, I think, before a lot of other people got into the Joe Rogan stuff.
Yeah.
And that was you, and you were, and that was on the heels of Alex Jones and who also Elon Musk. It was the Elon Musk.
Elon Musk had been on, Chuck Palahniuk. Like there had been like a weird day where there was like Chuck Palahniuk and someone else on in the same day.
Right. There was the Scooter Jennings. Shooter Jennings. Right.
But he was trying to browbeat, and there had been the Candace Owens thing. And then shortly after we did that, then he had Tulsi Gabbard on. There was like all these.
Right. So this was Joe basically flexing his new tail feathers.
Yeah.
Because he had shed and molted his tail feathers that were connecting him to people like Alex, the fake moon landing, Jan
the conspiracy
Rogan
stuff, yeah.
So he had new tail feathers that he wanted to fan.
Yeah.
And that's when he started to get heavy with people. And he started to kind of browbeat and use his kind of more, rational side. And you could see him migrate, over to, the dark intellectual web, and, sort of this new cadre that was taking over the narrative of the internet when it came to the discourse around things like truth, freedom of speech, and conspiracy. They were going to now control the narrative around that. So
he's
Joe,
now doing a lot of
doing.
He's doing a lot of dancing around, he's doing a lot of like, well, I believe in freedom, but with restrictions like this and that. Like he's really starting to look silly, and he really made a huge. I mean, for anybody who the problem with Joe Rogan, and again, I say this as a person who has for years enjoyed the Joe Rogan podcast and on occasion still does, but there's a huge problem with Joe Rogan. And this interview he did last week with Jack Dorsey, I think, was maybe a final straw in, the people who were refusing to see it now being able to very well see it. He had Jack Dorsey, who's the CEO of Twitter, on, and, gave him the most softball interview that one could ever give someone. Here you have the person who is basically, a fulcrum point for the future of free speech on a certain level on the internet. You have him there. He's been accused of, biased banning and all of this kind of stuff. And you just throw him softball. I mean, it wasn't even softballs. It was T-balls.
No, let's be clear. He was stroking Jack Dorsey.
Stroking him.
That's what he was doing.
And
go ahead.
And he, people, as the show was happening, were thumbs downing it. The number of thumbs down on this show was about 3 to 4 times as high as the number of thumbs up. And there was I've never seen so many negative comments on a Joe Rogan show. And he was either him or his, I can't remember the name of his, Jamie or something, the person who kind of his producer was deleting comments, or, sure, it's possible YouTube is, but then they're in on this. Sargon of Akkad made a comment on there that had the most amount of replies and thumbs up and thumbs down on it, and they deleted that one. So anything that was really critical in an intellectual way of either Rogan or Dorsey was being deleted. And then people got upset. I mean, within hours, there was all of these videos about people being upset about the fact that Joe Rogan, had this opportunity and softballed it. And now Joe Rogan has been sort of trying to explain this away and just making himself look sillier and sillier and sillier.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's be clear. One of the reasons why he had Jack Dorsey on the show, and one of the reasons why he was so, bromantic with him, is the fact that Jack Dorsey is one of the sponsors of his podcast. Yeah. And this gets into this whole realm of who is in whose pocket, who sponsors who, and where do they get the money from? What's the agenda? Because apparently there's Soros money inside of Rogan's podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And these are claims.
I hear people saying that, but I didn't know that there had actually been looking into that done.
These are claims that Alex Jones has been making. Alex Jones, like 2 days ago, publicly came out and ripped Rogan in a really very direct Alex Jonesian kind of fashion. And he says, I don't hate Joe Rogan. I find him revolting. And he had even worse things to say about Jack Dorsey. And one of the things that Jones talked about was that Dorsey was behind he says that he was one of the people behind Bitcoin. And that Bitcoin was a pump and dump scam. And he calls Dorsey out for being a part of that. He also calls Dorsey out as being part of the NSA, which I don't have any problem with, because you get into all the, the kind of the intelligence-based Silicon Valley stuff. It's going to circle back to the NSA. It's going to circle back to the CIA, but mostly the NSA. Say goodbye to Jasper.
Hi, Jasper.
Jasper's going to be taking a little time out.
Oh,
on the floor. So anyway, now we're looking at, well, who is Jack Dorsey? Where does he come from? What are his ties to? This is a really interesting time we're living in. Credibility is something that cannot be bought. It cannot be manufactured. And once you lose it, you're fucked. Okay? You're totally fucked. And we saw this also with the Super Bowl. Like, okay, I'm going to try to tie these two things together. If you go back and look at the game between the Los Angeles Rams and the New Orleans Saints, there is a play at the end of that game where a Rams player commits 2 egregious penalties on a New Orleans Saints player, which theoretically affects the outcome of the game. The chances of New Orleans winning that game are about 98.9%.
Okay.
If that penalty is called. It's not. And as a result of that, the Rams wind up winning the game, and they go on to the Super Bowl. I can't tell you how many comments that I saw on a number of platforms that were talking about that number one, the Super Bowl is fake, and number two, I haven't seen as many comments about the NFL being fixed as I have with this Super Bowl. Now, I've
never heard that from before. People who have always sworn to me that sports was real are like, now I think it's fixed.
That's right. So okay, this is important. I've been talking about this for years, right? I had what's his name, Toohey, the author of
Brian Toohey.
Brian Toohey. I had him on my show a couple of times.
Yeah.
The Fix is in. We talked about it.
I remember. Yeah.
And this was a long time ago. And now it's like, I would say that the comments on the game being fixed are about 4-1. 4 being, yeah, it's fixed, and 1 being, no, how can you? So the tide is turning here. This is a really interesting shift in our collective consciousness. Like, and I know that there are people at the NSA and a number of other groups that are watching how people are responding to what's going on, because like the veil is being ripped away. NFL's fixed, fake Super Bowl, Joe Rogan, sellouts. He's kowtowing to Jack Dorsey, surveillance state. If you go down far enough, right? That's what's happening, and people are seeing this now.
So, but listen to this. Okay, I'll actually finish your thought, and then I'll tell you.
That's it. That's all I want to.
Okay, so listen to this though. So you have to remember here the history between Joe Rogan and Alex Jones and where it comes from, right? So I was talking to a table at my work last night. I overheard them talking about Joe Rogan, and these look like total normies, and I could tell by some of the things I brought up that they were, although they found everything I had to say fascinating. They were actually at this point sympathetic to a certain level with Alex Jones, right? And it just kind of, not that I haven't thought about this before, but think about it, like Joe Rogan is doing with Jack Dorsey the same shit that Alex Jones is doing with Donald Trump, right? I think they're being controlled by the same handler.
Could be.
I think Joe Rogan and Alex Jones, I don't know if they're consciously aware that they're in on this together or if they're both being manipulated, and it's possibly by that CIA agent that Joe Rogan has on the show, right? Because think about this. The nexus point, right, where those two sort of come together is around Sacred Cow Productions, right? Kevin Booth's thing that Bill Hicks was a part of. Joe Rogan had some association with that when he was younger. It's how he's friends with Kevin Booth, right? So is Alex. That's a common guest that they have both had on their show, at times, right? Alex Jones and Bill Hicks had that very strange time of crossing over where they were in at the Access Television and where they were covering Waco, right? And it seemed that, as Bill Hicks's health and life declined, Alex Jones suddenly kind of appeared and picked up. And I'm not of the opinion that Alex Jones is Bill Hicks, which I know a lot of people are, but I think that the controllers love that possibility in that story because there is something there. I read this book one time that a friend of mine who's a huge Bill Hicks fan had. It was like some kind of biography of Bill Hicks, right? And in there, it detailed this one idea that Bill Hicks had for a character, and that character matches exactly who Alex Jones is.
Right.
Exactly. So this is an operation. I actually think Bill Hicks is a pretty clean guy, and that's why he's not here, right? Mm-hmm. Clean in terms of like his intent, and maybe by the time he realized what he might have been caught up in, whatever, I don't know. But the connections between Hicks and Rogan and Hicks and Jones are, and that whole this is a sacred cow. This is something that you cannot touch. This idea that we're talking about here, that seemingly opposing sides are controlled by not only the same faction, but maybe even the exact same hand, right? Because I've not heard Alex Jones complain about the fact that Joe Rogan has that CIA agent on over and over and over again, right? The other thing, the thing that constantly Joe Rogan brings up as the problem with Alex Jones is his stance on Sandy Hook, right? Well, Alex Jones is, first of all, in my opinion, compared to stances that other people have taken in the alternative media, Alex Jones's stance on Sandy Hook is pretty tame, right? He did the same thing with Sandy Hook that he does with everything, right? He said that there was a false flag. He said that there was elements to it that were fake, right? He didn't go into some of the really, really in-depth kind of stuff that other people went into, which there's probably a lot of truth to some of these things that these other people went into. He was pretty tame on it. But Sandy Hook was really the one, that they set out to cause a really big kind of divide between certain kinds of people, and these people that think that things are fake and that things are not fake, and that saying that, people, dead children, right? That when they run out of things to divide the people, you go for the thing about, oh, but children died, right?
Right.
Like Sandy Hook.
It's the capitalization of innocence.
Right. So Sandy Hook is like Sandy Hook was the new 9/11, right? Absolutely. Sandy Hook is actually the new Holocaust, right? Because you're either a Holocaust denier or you're a Holocaust believer. And the same thing with Sandy Hook. Either you think kids died or you didn't think kids died. And if you think kids died, you're saintly. And if you didn't think kids didn't die, then you're some evil demon, right? And so here they have, that's what this whole thing is about. Like, that's Joe Rogan's big problem with Alex. Joe's known Alex for years and knows that Alex has stuff like this to say about every little thing that goes on. Why would this one be the problem other than this is that sort of big setup?
Because it's the Maginot Line. You cross the line and you lose the sponsors.
I mean, I don't know.
That's really what it's about. I mean, he had to sacrifice Alex Jones.
And he's being sacrificed himself now.
Well, he is, because he when you get into that sacrificial mode and it's done. Look, sometimes we have to make sacrifices in our lives. That's just the way it is. Yeah. If you have a child, you have to make certain sacrifices. You spend more time with the kid, less time, running around and getting high, or you're partying or whatever. That's a sacrifice. It's part of the deal.
Yep.
So there are healthy sacrifices, but then
Mm-hmm.
there are unhealthy sacrifices. And those sacrifices, there's usually a price to pay for those sacrifices. And
Yeah.
now we're seeing
He
that
sacrificed Alex Jones, and
yes,
he's been sacrificed. He's been humiliated publicly
he's
by
paying the price because he's participating ultimately in a lie.
Mm-hmm. And he's being sacrificed right now because he's being mocked and shamed. And for the first time in his career, really having people make videos where they're shaming and mocking and making fun of him, and not just for smoking pot and talking about Bigfoot. This is really like Joe Rogan is a pussy, right? And Joe Rogan's part of his whole persona is built around his,
He's
being
macho.
MMA and macho and being an alpha male and all that kind of stuff, and this is a takedown of that.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think people could accuse Joe Rogan of being like toxically masculine.
Right.
Because he certainly doesn't come across that way in some ways, right?
Yeah.
So you can't really go there, kind of lump him into that.
But he's alpha. You can be alpha without being.
I think he. Yes, I agree, and I agree, and I think to a large extent, right? We're looking at like two models of people in the media or alternative media that have stood out for young men, and one is Joe Rogan, and the other is Jordan Peterson, and for different kinds of reasons. Like Joe Rogan is the big brother that like some of these young guys look up to,
or the cool uncle.
The cool uncle, big brother. It's like, I can count on him. He's tough. He's smart. He doesn't take any shit.
He's going to take me elk hunting. Yeah,
he's going to get high.
Yeah.
And then Jordan Peterson is the father, the intellectual father that explains why it's
professorial father.
Right, explains why it's important to clean your room. So these two guys have had a kind of a two-pronged presence in the hearts and minds of young men. And now Rogan's being disassembled. And Peterson, I believe, is next. I think the disassembling process of Jordan Peterson is about to begin.
By the way, we are planning a Matrix mash special at some point where we kind of mash on some of the different sides of Jordan Peterson. I think we should probably do that sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So it's an interesting kind of model to look at in terms of, male icons, how they've affected young men.
Right.
And, to some extent in a positive way.
And even the same thing could be said for Alex Jones in a different way. Like he wasn't quote unquote a male role model, but he was for a lot of people for a long time some sort of truth or model. Right? Think of how many people.
Alex is a Texan, right? Didn't take any shit, calling people out. But when Alex
says things that other people won't say, all that kind of stuff.
Right, but when push came to shove and Alex had to defend himself,
he folded.
He pussied out.
He folded. Joe Rogan's going to fold, and I think Jordan Peterson may be slightly more formidable, but we'll see what happens.
Jordan
ultimately, I think he'll fold to you. Your sound just went.
Oh, I don't know.
No, you're there. You're good.
Okay. There was something else about Alex that I wanted to bring up. Oh, yeah, it had to do with the money thing. Alex Jones he's been on the record, he makes $40 million gross with InfoWars.
Wow.
And that's selling an awful lot of supplements, don't you think? I mean, he also, I don't know if he gets, because he's syndicated on radio. Now, I don't know if he gets money to be syndicated, like stations are paying him for syndication rights. That may be part of his income stream as well. But he makes a shitload of money. And he's very upfront about that. So I think he's getting money from somebody else as well.
Sure.
It's just like, you look at
like Joe. Joe, remember back in the day when the podcast was still really good, how he would read the commercials online for like the Fleshlight and for his own supplements and things like that. You don't ever hear any of that on the show anymore, right? So they're not concerned with people buying stuff. These people who are his sponsors are all largely silent sponsors.
Right. So what are they sponsoring? What's their skin in the game?
What he talks about that will ultimately forward their agenda. This is about not so much about selling products as it is about selling ideas.
That's right.
Yeah.
Selling ideas. selling social movements,
Yeah.
selling a slice of culture, right?
Selling, a certain level of control is cool.
Yeah, but I think it gets into a much bigger territory about who's on whose payroll inside the alt media or inside, truth media, or however you want to slice and dice
Mm-hmm.
it. And I think there's a group, like, I don't think Nathan Stoltman's on anybody's payroll.
No.
Okay. I don't think Jake Morphonios is on anybody's payroll.
Jake Morphonios has gotten awfully weird. He's gotten awfully mean and defensive and weird and yeah.
But I don't think he's on anybody's payroll.
No, I don't think so either.
I could be wrong, but I don't
Yeah.
think he is. But you go up a few levels, now you're in the payroll world,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm not saying that he's on somebody's payroll, but how does Joseph Farrell make a living?
Mm-hmm.
Does he sell enough books to actually?
He writes an incredible amount of books.
Right.
He does write a lot of books.
He does write a lot of books.
And yeah, I mean, he has a background that would indicate that, could be involved in he has a degree in patristics, right? So he knows a lot about theology. He's obviously a literary scholar on a lot of levels. And I don't know.
I just think at some point there's going to be another discussion about how people in this world that you and I are in, at a higher level, how do they survive?
Yeah.
Who's paying their bills?
Yep.
And I think at some point more of this is going to come out.
Well, I mean, it's like for people like you and I, like we make a few shekels here and there from what we're doing. We use Patreon, and we certainly don't make enough for me to stop doing my day job, right? Like it makes things a little bit easier and affords us, the ability to do some things that we need to do to make the show interesting and whatnot. But yeah, like for people who are, I don't want to say I'm suspicious, because I do think that if I spent all of my time working on the show, I could probably turn it into something where I was making enough money to live off of, right? But there's people out there who are making enough money to live off of and seemingly making plenty of money, right? And yeah, like it just seems hard. I don't want to say it's impossible, but it is interesting because there's some people out there who don't seem to, a Joseph Farrell, right? Who it's not like he has a show he's doing every day or he has sponsors that we're aware of or anything like that. Yeah, it is interesting. I don't know, it's one of those things that it's like.
Here's the deal. If people are getting money, does that negate their message? I mean, then you have to look at who's giving the money. I mean, do you approve of it? What's their agenda? I
mean, my feeling on this has always been that, like, good information is good information. It doesn't actually matter where it comes from, right? But what happens is somebody might get one or two pieces of good information from somebody, and then they make them a god. They make them their information god, and there's a cult that forms around them. And so then all of a sudden, everything this person says is important or valuable or whatever, and that's just not true. I've gotten great information from people I despise and bullshit from people that I love. And so each piece of information always, if you're trying to find truth, has to be discerned on its own merits.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Speaking of discernment, you want to get into the Virginia thing?
Yeah, I was going to say we had brought up sacrifice, so let's go into the Virginia thing. Oh boy, so this has been going on for a couple of weeks, and we have what it's kind of turned into is this overshadowing of the idea of infanticide with the much more important problem of racism.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the seamy subtexts around this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're having a different discussion, and the discussion isn't about slaughtering newly born babies, ritually slaughtering them. It's about, white man bad. It's like, that's what it's de-evolved into. I wanted to show you this, because there's some weird stuff with this.
Okay.
I found this one image, and just because people like Justin Fairfax and Ralph Northam happen to be Democrats and occupying the same general office space in the same building, doesn't mean they're really linked or together. I wanted to show you this. This is a very interesting sort of edit from the Democratic ticket where you can see, well, there's Northam, okay, and then right there's Justin Fairfax,
Mm-hmm.
and then right below him, there's Mark Herring. These are the three guys that you want to vote for.
Okay.
Well, then look what happens. Where does Justin Fairfax go? Right now, all of a sudden, this is the later sort of handouts. That is, well, you got Ralph Northam, and you got Mark Herring, but Justin Fairfax isn't there anymore. I mean, it's really interesting, that even in their own party, that, well, yeah, he's a Democrat, but, maybe he's black, or maybe he's just want to be me and Mark, whatever. And the guy still got elected, but it's unusual. Maybe not it's unusual. I just thought that this was odd.
Yeah, that is odd.
That they would change the roster, right? From going from Northam, Fairfax to Herring to Northam and Herring. Okay. So I just wanted to bring that into
Was Fairfax not up for re-election?
No, he got reelected.
Okay, I didn't know if those elections always occur at the same time.
It was all concurrent.
Okay.
So, and one of the things that Ralph Northam really capitalized on was the fact that Ed Gillespie, who was the governor at that time, that Ed Gillespie allowed for the Charlottesville rally to happen.
Okay.
Right. So he had ads where they were mocking Ed Gillespie and the whole car thing.
Yeah, chasing with the Confederate flag and all that stuff. Right?
So it's ironic that he would use these tactics.
Right.
And then, have this piece of information that was surfaced. And here's what I think. I think that when his opposition research would have been Gillespie,
mm-hmm.
I think the opposition research couldn't find that yearbook photo. I think that the yearbook photo had been scrubbed or deleted or held in abeyance. And I think that was sprung. And I'm pretty sure that people inside the Democratic Party sprung that.
Yep.
So that they could, use this against Northam or have it stick to Northam and change this debate around the debacle. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, totally. Like to me, this whole thing. I mean, everybody's looking at all this stuff, and they're, but what came clear to me is that you had this thing with the late-term abortion and the infanticide, right? And both to take attention off of that, but also to put in everybody's face that issues related to race are more important than issues related to life, right? So they were virtue signaling that they are the party of, that's it, of identity politics first, right? And the one group of people that don't get to have an identity are babies. Right. And so this is a very interesting, it's a change the conversation kind of thing, but it's also a way of putting out in front of everybody. And so when people go along with this, when people are like, because all these SJWs think that it's much more important your stance on, racial equality and all that kind of stuff than on right to life. Right. So they're really putting it out there for everybody. See, you don't say anything about this bill, then you're okay with what we're doing. And this is what we're doing. And everybody's on, so it's just very more shaming and mocking of the public. That's, what I mean? It's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
People find this argument about whether he was in blackface to be a more troubling thing about him than that he was a doctor who seems to be okay with, infanticide. Right.
Exactly.
It's more troubling that he had a black, and then now this whole debate about it was me, it wasn't me, I didn't really do it there, but I did do blackface as Michael Jackson. You know what I mean? Like this can't be real.
Right. So he's walking it back. At first he was very, he fell on that sword again and again and again. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he is walking it back. So, well, maybe that's not me, before he's like, yeah, I made some really stupid mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
But then he gets to the whole Michael Jackson thing.
So weird, right?
So weird. Now, apparently, that photo, that is not him in blackface. Apparently, that's his current wife. And he's in the Klan outfit.
Okay.
because they were at a party together. They've been together since college. So apparently that was the two of them at a party. So that's not him. That's his current wife, and he's the one in the Klan outfit. Which, does it make it any worse? I mean, possibly. Yeah. So then let's go into some of the other things that are happening with this. We've got him, and now we've got this hashtag Me Too thing with Justin Fairfax, right? And Justin Fairfax is being accused. Let me see if I can pop this up here. I'll give you a visual of him. Justin Fairfax is being accused by a woman whose last name is Tyson, and her first name is Vanessa. Okay? So here's Justin Fairfax.
Wait, but I think the name Vanessa also means butterfly.
Interesting.
The name Vanessa means butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of interesting. Some monarch programming maybe there.
Mm-hmm. So here's the embattled lieutenant governor. Right now, the backstory with this is that him, and Vanessa Tyson had a long-term relationship. So when they got together, and she quote unquote forced him to perform oral sex on him, right?
He forced her. He forced her. I'm sorry, my bad. Yeah. He forced her to perform oral sex on him. It's not like he plucked her out of the hotel bar and popped her a roofie. They knew each other and they had a relationship. And he's pushing back in this very hard. And her attorney now is the attorney that represented Kavanaugh's girl. So, this is sort of in the hashtag, the Kavanaugh pipeline. Right. But it was the biggest deal in the world for the Kavanaugh situation. And in this situation, it seems to be seems more like there doesn't seem to be the outrage in the media.
Right. But it happened at a specific time. When they had their incident, that was in 2004.
Right. So why are we just hearing about it now?
This is just 15 years later.
Right.
And now it's being brought up. Why?
And you told me they were in a relationship prior that wasn't.
They were in a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
So he's forcefully, denied what she's saying.
Yeah.
But the name is interesting, right? Her last name is Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
And you're into the name stuff. At Tyson, that brings up this image of Mike Tyson.
Right. And there's also Tyson, Virginia. Tyson Square, Virginia. It's called Tyson Square.
Yeah.
And then Justin Fairfax. Fairfax is a county and a city in Virginia.
That's right.
Northam. There's Norfolk. There's all sorts of stuff like that, right?
It's of the North.
Of the North. So, but these are also all places in Virginia. But you were saying something that was interesting about the Justin Fairfax,
Justin Fairfax. Right? Here you go, right?
Or Justin Fairfax, we allow these things to happen. Justin Fairfax, right, or something like that. There's all these takes on it. The Vanessa Tyson thing is interesting because of Tyson Corners, Virginia. They do monarch programming in Fairfax, Virginia, in Tyson Square, Virginia. For some reason that I can't really fully explain to you, I spent a fair amount of time in Tyson Square, Virginia in my 19th year, my 18th and 19th year.
Right.
And when I would go there, I would actually stay with the woman who was the assistant to the Secretary of State. I think his name was Warren Christopher. Right?
Oh, yeah. Right. Short guy. Really short guy.
She was his secretary, and I would stay with her.
Yeah.
So then there's Mike Tyson, who, we talked about statutory rape, right?
That's right. So Mike Tyson
bit somebody's ear off. We don't want you hearing about this, right?
Yeah. So Mike Tyson went to prison because he was in a hotel room at roughly 1:32 in the morning with Desiree Washington.
Mm-hmm.
In
Washington. Desiree Washington? Desire Washington. So all these places are surrounding counties of Washington, D.C. That's very interesting.
Yeah. And so Desiree Washington, she was not a minor. She's an adult. And she's in Mike Tyson's hotel room at 1:30 in the morning. Mm-hmm. What do you think is going to happen?
Right.
Let's be real about this. So that sent Mike to jail. And he was not the same person when he came out. And when he came out, Don King got his claws in him and basically took everything from Mike Tyson. But there's association with Tyson, Mike Tyson,
Well,
statutory rape.
and then the other thing when you think about a particular boxer is float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali. So there's a butterfly reference when you're thinking about boxing. And even though Muhammad Ali is a very different kind of boxer than Mike Tyson, they're like, they're thought of so differently, but they're two of the, most famous boxers of all time, their own unique styles that were, not repeatable by anybody else really. Right.
Yeah, it's true.
So it is, and boxing, right? This is what's going on. I mean, that's what politics is at this point. It's a sparring match. It's a boxing match.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know that a lot of these fights are fixed, just like the politics are fixed, right? And they're controlled, just like Don King controls the boxing, right? There's people that are controlling these political situations. It's very possible this is all dog and pony show, and that they're all, in on it together and being controlled. It's kind of like the Joe Rogan, Alex Jones thing. Yeah,
you have to really consider that on some level, right? Because if you don't, you're not looking at all the particular angles. And then the third guy is this guy over here, and
this is hilarious.
And he's lieutenant governor, right? The attorney general. This is the attorney general, and this is Mark Herring. So you've got the guy from the north, right? Ralph from the north,
and he's wearing a red tie, so he could be a red herring, right?
Right. So he's a Mark, and then there's the Herring, and then you have Justin Fairfax. I mean, the names alone are just, they're. Do
you remember on Golden Girls when Rose would talk about the herring circus?
I have to say that I was not a.
She used to talk about back in St. Olaf, and she'd talk about the herring circus, right? All the time. Guys, go back and watch all episodes. So maybe this is about to become the herring circus.
Well, the one guy that
you were talking about circuses and carnivals when you were telling me about it.
About the Mark. Yeah, absolutely. So the one person that would stand to benefit from all this is a guy by the name of Kirk Roy. Because Kirk Roy, if all three of these clowns, Justin Fairfax, Ralph Northam, and Mark Herring, if they all bite the dust, Kirk Roy becomes the governor of Virginia.
And he's a Republican, right?
He is a Republican. Okay. And his Roy, of course, means king.
Right? Yeah, I was going to say Roy Rogers, right?
It's Royale, right?
Royale.
Yeah. So the king assumes the.
What does the name Kirk mean? My sister always talks about my nephew kirking out, like he's acting all like wild and retarded and whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't broken Kirk down, but Kirk Roy would assume, the leadership in Virginia.
Crazy royalty.
So he'd be the king of the Commonwealth, because that's what they refer to Virginia as the Commonwealth.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to shift gears and get into some of the Super Bowl stuff?
So let's take the butterfly and move right over to the tattoo that either does or doesn't exist on Adam Levine.
Right. So let's get into Adam Levine's tattoos. We'll get into some of the Super Bowl symbolism. Mm-hmm. And because I've got a number of Adam Levine pictures with his tattoos. So let me get into share mode.
I have to go to the bathroom. So while you get into share mode, let's both hit pause for 1 second. 1, 2, 3, hit pause. Sorry about that, guys. Nature called. Anyway, so we're going to get into Super Bowl and what you got for us.
Well, I just want to bring up a few images here with the Super Bowl. So here's Adam Levine. This is one kind of sideways image, because you can get a really clear,
that's definitely a butterfly
shot of the butterfly.
Mm-hmm. But look at those eyes; it almost looks like an owl.
Yeah, it's a specific type of butterfly. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's excuse me. It's got the owl image, and those aren't the only eyes plastered onto his body. So this is a good shot of the butterfly. I'll give you another shot here. 1 sec. And you can see more of the painted topography of his body. The inked landscape. Here we go. All right, so now you can see, here's the
Wow.
butterfly.
Ooh.
Now, what we have here, of course,
I'm feeling, ooh, I have, okay. I find his tattoos to be very triggering.
there's a lot of triggering going on here.
Yep.
So here we have the lion, right, Leo.
I almost feel like I'm going to throw up.
And then above the lion, you have California.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the eagle.
Yeah.
And, so
We have the cherub.
astrologically, we're dealing with Aquarius,
Mm-hmm.
Leo.
Mm-hmm.
And this is part of the alchemical,
Mm-hmm.
basically, quadricity or quadrant of Leo and Aquarius and Scorpio and Taurus, right? So,
What's on that hand that's holding the flower?
okay. Let me just go through this a little bit more.
Okay, sorry.
That's all right. And so above, okay, so now we have a woman who is gazing at the lion, right? And the lion is gazing back at this woman. She looks like it might be a representation of maybe Kuan Yin. I mean, it looks Chinese. I can zoom in a little bit on that, see if we can get a different take. What do you think, Emily?
It looks more like a flapper girl to me.
Flapper. Okay. So they're definitely connecting. Now that lion, right? It almost looks like it's a lion and a bull together.
Yeah.
You see
Looks
that?
like a hybrid. Yeah.
So we've got a lion because it's got the mane of a lion and it looks like a bull. So now we're definitely into the alchemy of the fixed sign, because that would be a combination of Taurus
And Leo.
and Leo. And I would assume maybe somewhere in here. Okay, so back here, do you see the scales? Okay, that's the snake or the reptile, and that's Scorpio. So here we have the lion, bull, and the eagle, scorpion, or the eagle, snake. So this is alchemical, right? He's got the alchemical combination of the fixed signs, and these are chimeras.
Yep, chimeras. That's what I meant, not hybrid. The chimeras.
Yeah, the chimeras, and then California is sandwiched between these chimerical / alchemical images, as above, so below.
Right.
Right. So there's an alchemical operation happening in his third chakra and his second chakra. Okay.
Interesting.
So we have power on a material plane and power on a submaterial plane.
Yeah.
Okay. Over here, I believe the DR is our initials for his wife.
Okay.
And who's from Namibia.
Interesting.
She's a model from Namibia. We'll get into her in a second. So I think, what is this, like True Love or something like that?
But I can't see what that says, but that also looks like it could be some kind of owl on the hand.
Yeah, it could be.
And what about that?
But I see the word, and then there's the rose over the heart.
Right.
So now he's into the heart chakra.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has the angel with a boxing glove.
Right.
And a black eye, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
The cherub, the love bite. Love's going to knock you out.
Then this is a symbol for Gemini in duality, right. The 11.
Yep. It also looks like a pause sign, a pause button.
Mm-hmm. Now this
looks like a 144 to me.
And this is Sanskrit, which I've not decoded.
Well, it also looks like 144, and I'm thinking about the 144,000 from the Bible, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's, a lot of discussion that goes on around that, and whether that was actually talking about people or a frequency or whatever. But, there's the idea that there are 144,000 original souls, and everything else is just some iteration or copy of that. And that, for those of us in like MK circles, we've talked about, is that sort of what these projects and programs are about, is finding the 144,000, original souls and trying to put a pause on them. So what they're here to do cannot happen, right? Like trying to put a pause on, if those people or those spirits or souls have come in at this time to, for some purpose or reason, and, programs are to sort of manipulate, take control, or put pause on their ability to access, what they're trying to do. So it's interesting to me that the Gemini, the duality, which is what...
Duality, it's also the Twin Towers, right?
Twin Towers, 11 is an interesting number, right, also.
Yeah.
So that's all very interesting.
He has a lot of floral designs on his arm. But over here, we have the Eye of Illumination.
Mm-hmm. With lots of rays. The sun is in there.
Right. This is the all-seeing eye.
Also like the outline of like an octagon, right? Mm-hmm. Or like there.
So we have the all-seeing. So he's...
The eye has heterochromia, which is another characteristic of people in projects and programs.
Interesting.
Multiple colors within one eye.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's the tour. This is very interesting.
It is.
Somebody knew what they were doing here.
The bird snake, that's like, so.
Absolutely. It's Aquarius and it's Scorpio. And here we have Taurus and Leo.
Mm-hmm.
They're connected. And California is this place where this alchemical operation is happening.
Well, he's from California.
Right.
And I think, and it's double-sided. Like California is a really magical place, right? It's a place where good magic can happen. It's a place where bad magic can happen. All the elements are here for either.
Absolutely. So if you go to his backside.
Oh boy.
I've got, there's one, I don't want to use this one. There's another image I want to use. If you go to his backside, there's some symbolism here, but it also is an homage to his wife. So I'll show you. So here's the elaborate backscape.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 6 swallows that are surrounding this kind of tapestry, and the mermaid. So we have a mermaid here.
Mm-hmm. The skull.
And so, yes, she's cradling the skull. And I believe the mermaid is his wife.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You can see the facial resemblance.
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, and the whole mermaid imagery is interesting, right? She's mythic and not real. She's aqueous, and she's cradling death, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what she's doing. And the six swallows are interesting, because Tom Brady and Bill Belichick won their 6th Super Bowl,
of course,
together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you now, not everybody on that Patriots team has won 6 Super Bowls,
right?
Okay, just Brady and Belichick. That's it. So you want to throw in Bob Kraft, maybe, right? So that's 6. So you have 666 with the Super Bowl, and you have 6 with the swallows. I don't know what this is. Is right here on the left, his left elbow.
The guitar thing.
Well, what the heck is that? Oh, it's a guitar. Thank you.
It's like a guitar or ukulele or something.
No, it is a guitar. I was looking at it from a different perspective. I was like,
a guitar.
I didn't see the frame. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, now he's got a guitar on his left hand or left arm. So I think a lot of the other stuff is kind of floral and sort of, there's wings here on his left arm. Anyway, I found and then he's got this if he could have just dropped his pants a little lower, he could have had a great product placement deal.
Yeah.
He's
gotten quite a bit bigger. He's much more muscular than he used to be. He used to be
this guy, he used to be really skinny, but now he's worked out and he likes showing off his buff body. He's got a commercial out with one of these male fragrances. It's totally obnoxious.
The Axe, yeah.
Oh my God. He gets up on the roof and he's like.
He's had that remember he was also in the, what's it called? The skin commercials. The, what's the acne product that they're always on TV with?
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. The one that actually ruins your skin. But the one that has the Morgellons in it, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so I have an interesting connection. I have 2 interesting connections to Adam Levine, one of which I cannot share at this time, but hopefully in the future I'll be able to share. And the second I will share, and that is that I was in about 3.5 years ago, I was in I can't remember the name of it, but there's like a Mexican and Asian fusion restaurant inside the Cosmopolitan Hotel in Las Vegas. And me and my dad were having lunch over there. And we were the only table in the restaurant at the time. And then someone sat down at the table right next to us, and it was 4 people. And 3, they looked like manager, crew, and someone that looked to me like Adam Levine. Right. And they all had, the credentials kind of around their neck, right? Looked like they were there for like a concert or something. I was, well, that's interesting. So I was, like I as soon as they got up and left, I told my dad who I thought it was, right? And but I wasn't 100% sure because I couldn't tell you one Maroon 5 song. I have no idea. It's not like something I pay close attention to. But he looked familiar, right?
Right.
And we got back to the hotel. We happened to be staying at the Luxor. And when we got back to the hotel, I noticed that on the magazine that is like for the hotel, that there's a picture of Adam Levine on the front because they're having a concert there that night at the Mandalay Bay, which is connected to the Luxor. They're owned by the same people, right? So, and he's on the cover. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that was Adam Levine because he's playing here tonight. That makes sense, right?
Right.
But the funny thing is the person sitting next to me in the restaurant didn't have any tattoos. And when he's on the cover of the magazine, he had his arms kind of like this or something like that. And you could see all his tattoos. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if the tattoos are fake. And this would go along with everything else.
So here's what I think. I think he has like a frame set with his tattoos. Like because I actually found images of his tattoos where it's just like his arms. So I think his arm tattoos and his back tattoo are probably permanent. I think the stuff going on in his belly, I think that might be temporary, and that he could be using that for whatever purpose, like he did.
I mean, at this time, this was 4 years ago. This person, now it's possible that he has a body double, and that was who I was sitting next to. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't know. But this person looked exactly like the same person, and he did not have tattoos on his arms. So, he also is Jewish, and there's a lot of Jewish people who, think that that's not good to get tattoos. And,
I mean, that's part of it. It's a bad thing.
Right. So, it dawned on me that the tattoos may just it may be entirely fake. He may have, something that he puts on just for shows or when he goes on tour or what, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying for sure yes or no. But this was an interesting experience I had. Of course, I had it in Las Vegas, which is a weird place of, it's an extra dimension of total delusion.
Right.
But I thought that was really interesting. So just like all these other things we've been talking about, like, fake situation in Virginia and the fake situation with Joe Rogan and Alex Jones and whatever, this is possibly another situation of, synthesis. I also, you talked about there being all these commercials for robots or clone kinds of things during the Super Bowl. And, we talk about that in terms of celebrities too. And he's certainly not immune to that possibility. I mean, are we always seeing the same person? Right?
It's true. There was a lot of other stuff going on during that halftime show.
Let's hear it.
Well, so one of the things see if I can find an image here really quickly. So Travis Scott is an interesting character. He's a baby daddy of one of the Jenner girls. I think he's one of the Jenner girls, Kylie Jenner. I get, I'm not up on that, but they have a kid together, and he's like the rapper of the moment, and he actually kind of crossed a line for the Super Bowl to be able to perform there, and because there was this whole Colin Kaepernick contingency that wanted black artists to boycott the Super Bowl.
Right.
And it was a big deal. And so Travis Scott shows up, and he's got really it's Kylie Jenner.
Okay.
That's her name. So there's really no connection with Travis Scott and Adam Levine and Maroon 5. So they're kludging They do it at these Super Bowls. They'll kludge artists together and try to
Mm-hmm.
make something unique get mashed up. But there was this weird transition that takes place during that. And what happens is that there's a SpongeBob video, and it's part of like an episode of SpongeBob where SpongeBob and his crew surface at a Super Bowl, and they play the halftime show to Super Bowl, and it's a song called "Sweet Victory."
Mm-hmm.
And this weird transition. It was really strange if you look at like if you looked at if you looked at the comments on the Super Bowl halftime performance, there were a ton of people who were really pissed off that the SpongeBob song didn't get played out. Like, I mean, that was like huge complaints. But the lead-in is the SpongeBob cartoon. Then all these fireballs come in, and the fireballs they're asteroids. And then Travis Scott comes in, and he's on one of the fireballs, and he becomes, when he starts to do his rapping thing, he's in the center of this sun, right? So Travis Scott plays the role of Lucifer, and he's the fallen angel that comes in to illuminate the halftime show. And let me see if I can come up with a picture around that.
Another connection that might be there's a connection that might exist between Travis Scott and Adam Levine is that, I don't know where Travis Scott is from, but he's been with Kylie Jenner. Kylie Jenner's family lives, in
Calabasas.
In the same area that Adam Levine's family lives in, right? Adam Levine's family lives in that same area near where I work, right? It's all in that sort of Calabasas, the Girl Westlake Village area of Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
So what's going on there?
Right. So here's a quick picture. I think I found one. I had one already set aside, but I couldn't. I lost it. But there's a quick picture of this moment where Travis Scott is playing in these flames, and the whole thing becomes this kind of illuminated landscape. So there is definitely an Illuminati theme or illuminated theme in the Super Bowl. I mean, they do it every year. Right. It is and
we were talking about fire in that area of Los Angeles earlier.
Right. And this is a ritual I believe that the halftime show was a ritual to Lucifer.
Isn't it pretty much always? It's either like Molech or Satan or Lucifer.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly. So I'm just going to bring this up here, at least this one.
Superb owl, right?
The superb owl. So here he is. Right. So this is right after he makes the entrance, from the animated fireballs hitting the stage. And now these spikes right here, you see them?
Yeah.
These are the rays of the sun. Okay, so he is illuminated. So he's the solar deity that's performing at the Super Bowl. And then when you have Big Boy come in, Big Boy happens to be an Aquarian. I don't know what Travis Scott's sign is, but Travis Scott clearly is in the center of the sun, which is ruled by Leo. So now you have Aquarius and Leo coming together again, right? And Big Boy, his crew is called the Atlians, which are the aliens from Atlanta, right? That's their thing. So now you have, the asteroids, the fireballs, you have Lucifer, you have this alien contingency from Atlanta, which is the new Atlantis.
Right.
And then you have Maroon 5. And Maroon 5 is being stranded, right? You're stranded. That's being marooned.
Okay.
And 5 is the number of man.
Okay.
When you look at Da Vinci's Divine Man, you have one arm, and you have the two legs, and you have the head.
Yeah.
That's the number 5, right?
Yeah.
So, clearly there was another ritualized hyper event going on during the Super Bowl. And everything kind of ends in flames.
It was a lot more muted than some of the others. There was a lot of people that thought there wasn't much going on during this halftime show, but if you look deeply enough, there really was.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, but it wasn't quite as in your face as like Madonna's thing or whatever, right? It was a little more subtle.
So off the charts. So I know we were kind of running out of time. I just wanted to burn through a few other things.
Yeah.
Really quickly. Excuse me. So the ads, the AI ads dominated the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, dominated. And so what we had were two very striking, compelling. Again, we're dealing with duality, which is the stock and trade. It is the magical stock and trade. So these were two of the Super Bowl ads.
That one on the right is so disturbing.
I know.
Ugh. Ugh.
Right, and then you have the Terminator version.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this weirdly strange baby divine.
Feeling a little sick to my stomach here.
Right, and then you have this. So we're getting both. We're getting they're crunching us, right? They're mashing us with this. And
it's benevolent and it's evil.
That's right. It's light and it's dark, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even human anymore. We've taken this dualistic proposition and now moved it into the AI realm. So there's a few other images that I wanted to share here. Salon did actually a really good piece on the whole halftime spectacle. So I just want to bring that up really quickly. And let me do this screen share here of this. So this is from Salon, and the nervous laughter of the Super Bowl's robot ads. So basically, what's going on here is that they're building in a sense of apprehension with this coming wave of automation.
Right.
And they're getting people to kind of laugh at it like it's a joke, poke fun at it, but at the same time, they're tapping into kind of this existential sort of fear that people are starting to have around what can take place.
Mm-hmm.
So here we have those two images. So Intuit is, it's a company that does TurboTax.
Yep.
And they've been doing these ads lately with, there's Simple Safe, right? And here's another one of the robot ads. I'm going to play this. I've got the sound down. So it's a very quick ad. This is the Michelob ad.
The Michelob Ultra Super Bowl, which is short for the MK Ultra Super Bowl.
There you go.
Yeah.
So here's the robots, and they're just outperforming everybody, right? It's like the guy hits a ball, and the robot just smacks the shit out of it.
There was a Michelob Ultra ad, like this big banner that was on the right off the 101 freeway, also in Calabasas. That looked like it had Simone Biles in it to me. It was either Simone Biles or someone who looks just like her, right? Yeah. That was interesting to me. That Michelob is totally with this whole kind of thing. There's running in a lot of their ads.
Right.
This idea, I think part of the combination of this AI stuff, because there's a lot of things like that around the tennis as well. Like a lot of those first IBM Watson ads came around the tennis, right? Mm-hmm. So these are sports where they're starting to introduce the possibility of robots and AIs and clones and stuff. And I think this is two sports where we're seeing that, right? We talked about Tom Brady last time being, the football robot. But one of the things that also happened in the last several weeks that we didn't just talk about was that Naomi Osaka won her second straight Grand Slam title. And in her press conference afterwards, she talked about basically playing like a robot or being a robot. Right. And at first I thought, okay, I understood. Like if I was a gymnast, I know sometimes you go into like a dissociative mode. I took it that way at first. And then I started thinking, she has a history of having some of the most awkward appearances in press conferences ever, where it seems like she's trying to use certain words or terms or ideas, but doesn't actually understand what they mean. So it comes out awkward. Mm-hmm. Well, that's exactly what a robot or a clone or something that wasn't really human would do. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, while they have intelligence, they don't have the same kind of, understanding of nuance and context, right?
Right.
So we have Tom Brady, Naomi Osaka being the victors of the two biggest sporting events so far this year.
Right.
And both of them have elements about them that are robot-like.
Right. Yes. Really quickly, you see this image?
Yep.
So this is an Asian woman who's part of the commercial. What do we think of with Asian? Like she's there for a reason.
Right. We
Right.
think of
She's not
robots. We think of
black, she's not-
Japan and robots.
You think of Japan, you think of robots, you think of people that are very, very perfection oriented, right?
And Naomi Osaka's half Japanese.
Right. And so
She's
what does
also
she do?
she's Haitian and Japanese, and Haitians are about zombies, right?
She gets absolutely. She gets outperformed by the robot.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the Intuit ad that I want to play really quickly. So what's interesting about these guys in this Intuit ad, here's the little, the weird little robot baby comes to life, right? And this is his father. He's calling him daddy. It's bizarre. It's totally bizarre. And if you look at, let me just stop the video here. If you look at the three people, they've been in a series of ads.
Mm-hmm.
And they all
That
are.
guy on the right is really weird.
He's very weird. He's got really super long hair. And he almost looks like a woman. Right?
Yeah. Like somewhere between a woman and a caveman.
Yeah. And then the girl is always tough. She doesn't smile. She's a sourpuss.
Mm-hmm.
She's obviously super smart, cynical. And then you have kind of the soy boy, right, who's a geek. I mean, advertising is just getting really ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. And then there was this one ad. I'm not even sure we should get into. We should save this for another time.
Yeah.
Let's save the ASVR stuff for another time.
Okay.
Because we need to spend time with that, and that actually
it is so weird.
That actually triggered you.
Yeah.
So let's you and I get back together. Let's do another MASH next week, and then we'll get into it. Okay.
That sounds good.
All right. Cool.
So I guess then let's put a bow on this one. So I think everything we talked about, although they seem totally separate, were always tied together by a theme from the last one. So
yeah,
it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Emily, it's been great hanging out with you.
It always is.
Mashing it up.
Absolutely, guys. We'll be back real soon with another MASH. If you want an astrological reading, hit Robert up at robertphoenix.com. You can find me at offplanetradio.com. If you're interested in a nutritional consultation, lifestyle concentration, hit me up on Facebook at Emily Moyer. And I'm getting a little more action in that area lately. I appreciate that. So, yeah, you know where to find us. Cool.
Bye, everybody.
All righty. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Bye.